Hey y'all, so let me turn this off. Oh, I'm gonna turn it down. Now this little fan be getting up there. So I am, first of all, hey y'all, how y'all doing? It's me, your girl Sassy the Truck Boss. So it's Saturday night and I'm working on just my numbers, just seeing what all came in last year. As far as what my business grossed. I did switch bank accounts in the middle of the year. So from August, so 5 months, I went into a new bank account with Chase, which I don't really care for Chase. That's a whole nother story though. I'm just not a fan of Chase. I think you have to be like a billionaire. Like you gotta be like making a lot of money when you're working with Chase. Only because they're not really personable. But anyways, that's a whole other story. So what I'm doing is Monday is coming up. So right now I'm just going over my numbers to see what was going out, what was coming in and what was going out. I'm also redoing my payroll stuff because I brought on a new girl for my payroll. So just setting up a new email address for payroll. And then I made changes coming into 2026 as far as how I invoice and everything. Just new vendor contracts. I do suggest that when you are working with vendors that you do have vendor contracts, something that is like non-solicitation, because when you get on these contracts, you don't want them to go behind your back. Like your subs, you don't want them to go behind your back and then try to steal the contract from you, or hey, I could do the contract for you for a cheaper price, whatever. You don't want them to do that. And then also just having a clear, concise understanding of how things are going to work. So like for me, each contract is different because it just depends on how I'm getting paid. Some of my contracts I get paid on a net 30. Some contracts I get paid the same week. Some contracts I get paid a week in a whole. So it just depends. And however I get paid, I try to well, I'm not gonna say that. I do not like to pay my brokers weekly. I like to at least do a net 15 or twice a month, so every 15 days actually. And the reason why I found that to be beneficial for me and my business is because sometimes these brokers will pay you and they will, okay, so let's be clear. Sometimes the brokers will pay you on time. Like if your check is supposed to be in your account on the 21st of the month, your check will be in there. But what I've experienced with Chase is, and I guess I've only had an account with them for 5 months, is that they will hold funds even if it's like directly in there still pending. And I like to, the money comes in my account, I like to pay my brokers. But that doesn't work like that. So when you set up ACH payments, or if you do like a Zelle payment, because the Zelle payment is essentially the same thing as an ACH payment, the money is in your account and it's showing that it's in your account, or it's showing it's pending. So when you try to do like an ACH payment, or you try to do like a Zelle or something like that, even if you try to do like Cash App, like it won't let you send the money, because even though the money is in there and it's reflecting in your bank account, it's still showing it's pending. And so it's caused me to have to go to the bank sometimes and go actually get a like do a bank to bank there, or take the money out of the bank and then go over. And then if it's over a certain amount of money, then you have to call the bank, of course. Like I'm paying out $30,000-$40,000 payroll sometimes just to one broker, and so I'm sorry, to one sub. And so you can't just go and Chase and say I want $30,000 cash. Like you have to call them. So I like to keep 2 times a month. And then like I said, it kind of changes just depending on the type of contract that I'm on, but that has been beneficial for me. Also, I make it very clear that all my invoices have to be to me on Monday mornings by 10 a.m. in the morning at the latest, in order for them to be paid on time. If the invoice is not to me by that time, then just go ahead and know that your pay is going to be delayed. And then also, whenever I do get the invoices, I need them to be in hard copy, and I also need the tickets to be in hard copy. And so this is the reason why it's important for you to make sure that you get the tickets in hard copy, because a lot of times your subs will say, hey, I'm going to scan the tickets over to you, I'm going to scan the invoices over to you. And what could happen is it's a lot of backdooring. And what can happen is they can go to the customer and say, "Oh, hey, excuse me, I didn't mean to say ho." They can say, "Hey, I never got paid," or they can go through another broker who may be working on a different contract or something, and it's like double brokering almost, and they say, "Hey, I didn't get paid for this," with now reality they didn't get paid for it, and then they can get paid on this end because they still have the tickets, and then the customer can say, "Well, let me see the tickets." And so to alleviate all of that, I just say, "Hey, send me the invoice, I need that hard copy, and I need the tickets hard copy," because the company themselves are already going to have a ticket, because whenever they sign you out every day, they're going to have a copy of the ticket. You have to give them a copy, and then I get a copy of the ticket, and then my subs keep a copy of their tickets. So everything has to match. A lot of times the subs will just send you an invoice and say, "Hey, I'm gonna get your tickets there later," and then expect they pay. No, I've learned that if you have to be very strict with your subs, you have to be very strict with your vendors, because if you are not strict with them, they are going to play games with you, and they want their money. They want their money, but they're not gonna do right. And if you let them just get over and keep doing stuff, they're gonna keep doing stuff. So no, so going into 2026, and I do this yearly, is I just update my stuff. I always make sure that as we go into the new year, I need to update a copy of your W-9, update a copy of your insurance, which I needed to come from your insurance company. I need them to email it to me. Also, make sure that they sign the contract. And in the contract, I'll tell you some of the things that I have in my contracts. Some of the things that I have in my contracts are, yeah. So, like I said, invoicing requirements have to be in by 10 a.m. on Monday mornings. I must have hard copies, and all the tickets must match the hard copies. And this is another thing, like one of my contracts right now, well, I have two contracts for the same company, two different jobs, so two different PO numbers. And so sometimes, because you will have the same subs working both contracts, working both jobs, they will try to invoice you as one. No. I need two separate invoices for two separate PO numbers with all the tickets to match. And right now, that's something I'm going through with one of my subs right now. It's because they invoiced me and then everything was combined together, and I'm trying to figure these tickets out, do this, do that. So right now, they pay is on hold because I have to make sure all those tickets match. You know, we pushing out like I said, maybe somewhere, just depending on the weather and stuff, somewhere between 500 to 1,200 loads of dirt. You know, that's on one job, but then on the other job, we might be doing another 200 to 300 loads because it's a smaller job. But they're both being dumped. They're being loaded in two different places, but they're being dumped in the same dump site. And so you just have to make sure that you stay on top of it. And so I do that. Also, when it comes to this industry, y'all, my hands always ashy because I wash my hands consistently all the time. And I'm in my home office just working right now. But so there's different ways that you can get paid. If you can pay yourselves what you're getting paid. So whatever the company is paying you, whatever you negotiated with the company, you can pay your subs that price, and then you can charge them a broker fee. And the broker fee is just depending on your state in your area. Some broker fees is 5%, and they can go all the way up to 20%. That's just preference, and that's just about the industry and where you at. I mean, your area where you at. Or you can take a certain amount from whatever you negotiated, the rate that you negotiated. So if you negotiated, let's just say $135 a load, you can pay your subs $100, and then now you keep the $35. So it's all about your negotiation. It's all about how you do your proposals and how you're able to get your numbers right. That's a whole nother class for a whole nother thing. That's what I teach in my coaching, my hybrid coaching class. So if you want to know, tap in with me, send me an email. So yeah, I also put that in my contract. I put my broker fee. Also, I make sure that I put whatever my required documents one being a current and updated W-9, and the other one being a valid certificate of insurance, so a COI, certificate of insurance. Something else that I put in there is the invoicing cycle. So for me, I do bi-monthly. I do the 1st and the 15th of each month. So you need to invoice me on the 1st and the 15th of each month. You get paid from those days. So if you invoice me on the 1st, you're gonna get a check on the 15th. When you invoice me on the 15th, you're gonna get a check on the 30th. That's how I do mine. It makes sense for me. Some people do theirs differently. When you start being a bigger company and you have the capital that you can, and when I say capital, I'm not saying $100,000. I'm saying you got a couple of $100,000 that's in the bank that you're able to just pay your subs up front with no issues. Then you can kind of maneuver around and kind of change how you do your paying. Now, granted, some jobs I have another contract where this GC pays me weekly, and when that GC pays me weekly, I will pay my I will pay my subs weekly, because I'm getting paid weekly, so I will pay them weekly. But it all just depends, and I always had that conversation with them. So that, and then I also make sure that I let them know that I have to have the hard copies of the tickets, and it has to match those invoices. And just be very specific when you do your vendor packet, your policies and stuff like that. For instance, sometimes you will have paydays that fall on a Sunday. So if they fall on a Sunday, I let them know, hey, if your payment falls on a Sunday or like on a weekend, then you'll receive your check that following Monday. If it falls on a holiday, you will receive your check the Friday prior to that holiday or the day before that holiday, because I know that you need your money. It's the holiday, so I get that. And then just some other things that I like to put into my thing is safety. So I had a subcontractor who one of the drivers got out of the truck, and when he got out of the truck, they were loading. I guess they told him that the back of his truck, the tailgates wasn't locked, so I guess he got out to look. And that's just something that we do as drivers. I've done it plenty of times. But I always get out, I'm not gonna say always, because there's been times that I just jump out the truck. But I also try to keep my hard hats. And so he got out, and as they was dumping, I guess some dirt hit him and he fell and all that stuff. That's why it's important to have that's why it's important to have your COI, workman's comp and stuff, so that you're not liable for if they get hurt. And because he didn't have on the proper PPE, is really nothing that the company could do. It didn't fall on me regardless, but like if they were to try to go to the GC and sue them and all that, it would be a whole thing because you didn't have the proper equipment on. But I put that in my vendor contract. Hey, if your driver gets out of the truck, they need to have on their PPE. Anytime that they are on that job site, they need to have on a safety vest, they need to have on steel toe boots, and they need to have on a hard hat. So that covers me. So if something happens, they can't come back and say, oh, we're gonna sue you for this or that. You can't do it because you signed a contract. So you need to make sure that that's what's in that truck. So that's something I always do. Something else that I've included in my contracts is attendance. If I hire you as a subcontractor to fulfill a job, and we doing this job, and I need you to be at this job at 7 a.m., I expect your trucks to be there at 6:45 in reality. But that's the military in me. But that truck needs to be there on time. I don't need a GC or foreman or a superintendent calling me saying, hey, I'm looking for this truck. Where's the trucks? I don't see the trucks. I don't need that, and I'm not going to deal with it. And so what I've done is, now granted, I do know I'm a truck driver. I've been a truck driver. I've been in transportation for 19 years. It'll be 20 years in June of this year. Ooh, dang, 20 years. Woo. But anyhow, so I do know you have breakdowns, tires, traffic, things like that. So that's where the communication come in. That's the inevitable, those things that you cannot do. I mean, like you can't, it's nothing that you can do about those things. The issue is when you have a driver that knows that their truck is broke down, or they're sitting at the lot and they're supposed to be there at 7 o'clock, and here we are at 7:30, and nobody's heard nothing from them. And then I'm calling looking for you, and then you have to call your driver. You have to call the driver and say where the driver is, and you tell me, oh, he broke down. He just now told me. That's a communication between you and your driver. So now that puts me in a bind, because the one thing that I guarantee, my selling point for my when I get my contracts is I guarantee that I can be a problem solver, and most of the problems with trucking is on time, being on time, and reliability. So you are essentially messing up my name. And so if you don't communicate that with me, and I can't communicate that with the GC, then we're going to have an issue, because at the end of the day, it's all about communication. So I've made it a point to put in my vendor contracts that if you are late more than 3 times within that month, and I don't care, that's every truck. So if you have trucks that, if you have this truck is late more than 3 times, or any truck, if it's late more, if you have more than 3 times that you late, I charge you $100. So if you've been late 6 times within that month, I'm gonna charge you $200. Y'all get what I'm saying? And it's not about, oh, that's dang. No, you have to be like that with people, because if you don't, they're going to run over you. And at the end of the day, it's about business. Your business, it's your business. You're the face of your business. They're not the face of your business. If something happens, the GC not gonna come to you. The GC gonna come to you. You can't say, oh well, R&T Trucking, that's who I hired. So I don't know R&T Trucking. I don't pay them. I pay Sassy the Truck Boss. I pay STTB Enterprises. So what we doing? So one of the biggest thing is a non-solicitation. Non-solicitation. In mine, I have a 12-month agreement, pretty much saying like after 12, if we part ways, you have 12 months. So 12 from that day to 12 months later, you cannot solicit any of my clients. Anybody that I work with, you cannot go work with them directly. You can't talk to the project owner, general contractors, customers, clients, anybody that I work with, anybody that you met through me in my business, you cannot work with them. And they do it. They do it. But if I found out that you did it, I'm coming for your neck. I'm coming for my money. Like this, I'm telling y'all, it's a cutthroat game, and I'm not even playing with you. I'm coming for my money. I'm coming. You can't solicit any subcontractors that I'm working with that you see on the job. Don't solicit them. Don't solicit them for your own personal job over here. Don't solicit them. Vendors or drivers, don't solicit them. Now, don't get me wrong, and that's why I try to like the subcontract. My vendor that I'm using right now, we have a really good relationship. I don't use no other trucks but his trucks for all my jobs. And so if he brokers out other trucks, that's on him. He figures out the pricing, but whatever my price is to him, that's the price that I give him. And then if he get other trucks, then so be it. But I try to keep it that way, to keep that type of relationship. But you still have to have other vendors that you work with, because if you don't have other vendors, then you set yourself up. If something happens with y'all, or it's just business, something happened, a pay is delayed, or a ticket's not right or something, they decide they don't want to work, you need other trucks to be able to still do those jobs. And then I also do just a simple non-compete. And then just another big important one is confidentiality. Whatever goes on between us, business-wise, you cannot go on the internet, talk about it. You can't go tell other contractors. Same with me. I can't go to the GC and say, oh, don't ever work with them. I can't go to other brokers and say, why would you don't ever work with them? No, because we all make mistakes. Business is not perfect. Things do happen. So I'm not gonna go back and say, because what our problem may be, like whatever issues that we may have had may be different when you work with somebody else, and whatever. It's the same thing with me. Like, you may not like how I work, but I might work with somebody else and they like how I work. Everybody's I can't think of how to say it. It's on the tip of my tongue, it's in my mind. But yeah, that's just something that I put in my contracts as well. And then I just get it signed and everything, move accordingly. But I haven't had any issues with subs here. I did have one problem when I first started, and I'm gonna tell y'all that story later, because it's definitely a story to be told. But I did have one issue with one person when I got here. But yeah, so that's what I'm working on right now. Just trying to tidy everything up because we're going into Monday. This will be the first work week, full work week of 2026. So I want to make sure I'm hitting it with a banger. I will be going out doing a lot of grassroots marketing, door knocking, getting some more contracts. So that's my spill for tonight. I hope y'all enjoy the rest of y'all Saturday, and I will talk to you all tomorrow because I'm making sure I'm intentional and dropping a video every day. So y'all subscribe to my channel. Bye.